I mean, the revolutionary era. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the Northern Slavery Collective State of the States, sponsored by TD Bank. Today, you will hear from professionals in the field about the latest research and interpretive efforts in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. But before I introduce our speakers, I would like to invite Cindy Matos from TD Bank to say a few words. Yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. At TD Bank, we are very proud to support the Dyckman Farmhouse and the Northern Slavery Collective on programming and initiatives that support sustainable change. So I'm very happy to be here with you all today, and thank you so much for your continued support.
Thank you so much. Now to introduce our speakers. Today you will be hearing from Levada Nahan. She is a culinary historian focused on the 17th and 19th century Mid-Atlantic region with an emphasis on the work of enslaved cooks in the homes of the elite class. Levada is also the interpreter for African American history for the Bureau of Historic Sites, a division of the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. Her mission is to bring history to life, both its tastes and by giving presence to the Africans and African Americans enslaved in the landmass that was once New Netherland in whatever way possible. Representing New Jersey is Noelle Williams. She is the director of the African American History Program and the Black Heritage Trail at the New Jersey Historical Commission. As part of the New Jersey Historical Commission, the African American History Program champions and partners with universities, historical societies, schools, and other institutions, groups and individuals in a collaborative statewide effort to develop African American history in New Jersey. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, our Connecticut representative, Heather Lodge, was not able to be with us today, but we are very happy to have Levada Nahan stepping in to go over the material for that state. And now I will hand over the presentation to Levada Nahan.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you everyone for being here today. All over New York, research, programs, and exhibits are changing what we thought we knew about the colonial and the new nation lives of Africans and their descendants, and opening the way for a richer history for us to share. It is my honor to present to you just a few highlights of some of the amazing work that is happening in New York. Research and delving into primary documents is our daily bread. The limited number of secondary sources is both a boon and a hindrance in sharing Black history from New York. It slows us down, but at the same time, it opens us up for constantly correcting and expanding what we thought we knew. On August the 12th, a team from the African American Archive of Columbia County shared that they were on a research trip looking into land deeds from the 1800s and happened upon a big surprise. In the back of one book, behind hundreds of pages of real estate transactions, they found 30 manumission documents. The real deal, handwritten when enslaved people were given their freedom. They literally had found buried treasure. And we are so excited about this discovery, and better, that these documents are now available for all of us to see and to use. They have been digitized and are now part of the growing collection of primary documents that can be found at the New York Heritage Digital Collection. Be sure to go and check them out. Too often, much too often, when we speak of enslavement in New York, we focus on the mid to lower Hudson River Valley, New York City, and Brooklyn. By doing so, we negate the presence of thousands of enslaved people who lived above Kingston. Following the Rev War, the lands in western and central New York that had been controlled by the Six Nations were used to compensate soldiers for their service. Sections of those lands also ended up in the hands of land speculators. Southerners moved into the area, bringing their enslaved people with them, often with the intention of trying to recreate Southern plantations. In the Finger Lakes region, research into the lives of enslaved people brought from Virginia to live and build on these properties is expanding what we can talk about to create a fuller state story. Sharing this information allows us to broaden the story that leads up to 1827 and into the period of transition, a period of time when networks of the newly freed built Black communities to support each other as they worked to stabilize their lives and opening the way for support of Southern freedom seekers for the Underground Railroad. This is a dynamic story being shared at Rose Hill, a property of historic Geneva. Built between 1797 and 1827, this story is a must-read. Please visit their website and reach out to them if you have any questions. No longer do we have to dance around the answer when we are asked, when did the first Africans arrive in New York? Of course, many respond with Juan Rodriguez and his journal. But generally, when I have been asked, people were wanting to know when the first arrived that were enslaved. We now can thank Dr. Jaap Jacobs for his amazing research and a paper that was published last summer in the Journal of New York History. Years of work have given us the date, the name of the ship, and the circumstances for this adventure. This seminal work is just a piece of the research happening around the Dutch West India Company and the foundations created in New Netherlands for the institution of slavery that would last for the next 200 years. Not speaking to the Dutch period hinders people's understanding of the beginning of the colony and so many things, including the institution of slavery. It is both the time when Africans were brought in to fill the need for labor caused by low immigration of Dutch to New Netherlands, and it is also just a few years after the arrival that the West India Company's decision to grow wheat to feed the enslaved on the Dutch-controlled sugar plantations in Brazil established the cash crop that would remain the colony's main source of revenue until the early 19th century. At a conference held earlier this year, The Dutch and the Slavery in the Atlantic World, Dr. Jerome de Wolf presented his ongoing research that may give us the name of the Portuguese ship and information of this voyage that those first 22 men were taken from. There is a need for volunteers of all ages at so many historic sites and locations across the state. Work has been done in seniors and who can read and write cursive to help transcribe historic documents, but we also need younger people, especially to interact with visitors and to begin preparing them to replace some of us who are aging out. Over the years, the Underground Railroad Education Center in Albany has run many programs to develop youth involvement at their site. This past summer, an opportunity to introduce historic interpretive work to youth in the Albany area through the 2024 Albany City Youth Employment Program created an opportunity to introduce public history to more students. 4 students in Albany schools wrote, practiced, and then presented a tour of the Stephen and Harriet Myers residence and the Abram Johnson Garden. The 4 students began learning from more encompassing tours from the founders, Paul and Mary Liz Stewart. And they analyzed the artifacts and different kinds of learning styles. As the students learned, they wanted to give the history in their tour. They emphasized the people who lived in those spaces, the artifacts the historic figures interacted with, their correspondence, and the adjustments made to make these stories available and accessible to visitors. Through this, they practiced public speaking with the visitors, and they created a digital tour, which I invite you to go to YouTube and see. The students, along with their guidance, created a feedback form to give to the visitors who rated them overall as great or superb. The summer program gave students a deeper understanding of how history can be learned and taught, encouraging the students to emphasize the historic lives open to the eyes of through their mentors, Lacey and Marcus, to how their tours could be more engaging to younger audiences. 2027. What a year we have ahead of us. On July the 4th and 5th, we will commemorate the 200th anniversary of the legal end of slavery, but not the freeing of all of the people. On July the 5th, we are including it. We are using these 2 days because the historic Black community celebrated on 2 days. In fear of reprisals for celebrating on the nation's birthday, the Black community held low-key programs in churches and other locations on the 4th. But the parades and the street celebrations happened the next day. Now, 8 weeks later, we will commemorate the 400th anniversary of the arrival and the enslavement of the first 22 African men enslaved by the Dutch West India Company in New Netherlands on August the 29th. Because this historic moment arrived when our awareness only recently, few, including myself, have begun to contemplate how we start this cycle of history all over again, but it is not far from our thoughts. These 2 major commemorations are the pinnacles of the history of the institution of slavery in our state. Preparations for 2027 have already begun. I have been working for a while on a multi-year program for parks entitled Enslavement to Freedom, 1627, 1827, 2027. It includes 3 temporary exhibits at state historic sites, 6 traveling banner exhibits, 1 of which is already mounted at Claremont State Historic Site, Redefining the Family, the Livingstons, and their institution of slavery in early America. The traveling exhibits will be available for use for free to historic organizations, libraries, and educational facilities, with the first 2 going out in 2025 for Black History Month, onto the concourse at Empire Plaza. There will be an ArcGIS story map that speaks to the beginning of the fight for Black civil rights, which begins when humans were reclassified from property to people, not in the 1960s. There will also be a survey of African cultural material from around the state, a survey of historic 17th through 19th century historic Black burial grounds and cemeteries done in conjunction with New York State Office of Preservation, and a possible conference. There will be numerous programs in person and virtually. More information on the 2027 calendar events, how to share your posts, etc., will be forthcoming. That calendar will be hosted on behalf of the Underground Railroad Consortium by the Stephen and by the Myers residents or the Underground Railroad Education Center. This is a unique opportunity for us to put to rest the constant comments or questions around there being slavery in New York. I encourage everyone to begin now. How does your site, your historic organization, your community commemorate these historic dates? Thank you.
Great, thank you, Loretta. So for a moment, I actually had a pretty emotional moment due to the fact that one of the few primary sources that we have in Newark, which is where I live, I actually work in Trenton, one of the few primary sources that we actually have are actually relating to of an Underground Railroad occurrence is actually a person who was sent from Newark, downtown Newark, to Stephen Myers in Albany. So a lot of the research that I've been doing and others have been, well, that I've been doing and other folks have been doing, have been making these connections, right, between New Jersey, Philadelphia, New York, and Connecticut, because these are all interwoven stories. So thank you for sharing the picture of the house, because I was sitting there imagining him leaving a brownstone in Newark and then eventually making it there to another brownstone in Albany. My name is Noelle Lorraine Williams, and I work for the Department of State in New Jersey under Governor Murphy and Lieutenant Governor Tahisha Way. This is our cultural complex in New Jersey, and the commission is actually a state agency dedicated to the advancement of public knowledge and preservation. We believe heritage is essential to sustaining a cohesive and robust democracy. We receive money by legislative appropriation. And one of the things that's really important about the commission is that we do programming, but we also have a grant making system. And one of the things in preparing this presentation is I realized how much the commission sustains a lot of our historical organizations in New Jersey. And so a lot of the organizations that I'll be discussing today are actually funded by the Historical Commission. But I would also like to take a moment to apologize because we have so many projects in New Jersey. So if I overlook some today in advance, I would like to extend my apologies because everyone is doing amazing work throughout New Jersey. One of the things about New Jersey is its legacy of slavery is always questioned. Audiences are often surprised that there are even enslaved folks in New Jersey. Sometimes people even question if the enslaved people actually worked
in New Jersey. There are lots of just a lot of incredulousness around this whole concept. And I know you touched on that a little in your presentation. New Jersey was the last northern state to end slavery. This gentleman on the right was our governor, Marcus Ward, who ratified the 13th Amendment after it had already been federally ratified, and it didn't really matter if New Jersey ratified it. His first action as governor was to ratify it, though New Jersey did not initially ratify the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. One of the important things when we think about New Jersey is that it was initially a part of when we think of plantations and plantation systems, often people associate the term plantation with the South. Plantations are actually areas of land that are used to produce a crop that is not used for subsistence. So basically a crop that's used for profit. For example, early Newark is described in records as the Newark plantation. This map situates both the ceded and unceded land from indigenous communities within an English colonial settler context. So we see New Jersey, but we also see other British colonial spaces on this map. So that's the context that we should think of early New Jersey as well as early New York. But obviously, it does not start with the British in New Jersey, as it didn't start with the British in New York. We have New Jersey was initially a part of what we call New Amsterdam. This 19th century drawing actually depicts the Pavonia Massacre. How many of y'all are familiar with Jersey City and Hoboken? Okay, so this took place near the Newport Mall area, which is in between Jersey City and Hoboken. It was a military action by William Keith, who was a Dutch merchant and the director of New Netherland, of which New Amsterdam was the capital from 1638 to 1647. This image is often used a lot in discussing New Amsterdam as well as it relates to New York. Free and enslaved Africans came to this region with the Dutch in the 1600s. And then over here, again, I'm sharing this, a new map of the English plantations in America. So when we look at how the enslaved population in New Jersey grows, we see in 1727, there's about 4,000 enslaved folks. By the time we get to 1790, we have approximately 11,000 enslaved people. The height of enslavement, according to this tally, includes 12,422 people. One of the things that's important that New Jersey scholars often emphasize is that these census and other tallies are not necessarily trustworthy for a variety of factors. The first is that all of the enslavers are not necessarily registering their enslaved, registering new births. And also New Jersey, which I believe this also happened in New York as well, often had a process of lending enslaved people to different businesses during different periods of the year. So essentially, one could lend, 3 workers for a mill project, and they might not necessarily be counted on the census, either intentionally or by mistake. So New Jersey has its 1804 Abolition Act. So for African Americans, our lobby for freedom has always been a multi-layered local, national, and global strategy. What's important to understand about the Gradual Abolition Act is that its wording favors the enslavers, right? So this wording what it's saying is how exactly, and I think people miss this argument often in looking at enslavement, is how do you minimize the economic damage to enslavers and the businesses connect with enslavement? That is the key question during slavery. It's not necessarily the issue of morality. It's how do we minimize this the economic impact of freedom? How do we balance this against the violence, right? I can't recall the author now, but we look at violence as a strategy in keeping people enslaved. And so one author actually looks at the amount of violence enacted against enslaved people as a way to maintain that economic system. So that's really what undergirds many of the discussions about slavery from its inception. So what's amazing about New Jersey is that we have several different components or several different types of institutions, communities, and groups that are working on enslavement and Black liberation in New Jersey. We have Department of State projects, of which I direct some of them. We are also a part of the cultural complex in Trenton. So I'm in the building with New Jersey State Archives, as well as the New Jersey State Library. We have universities like Rutgers and Princeton. We have historical societies like the New Jersey Historical Society, museums like the Newark Museum of Art, community groups, and individuals. So this is actually an image I took 2 weeks ago. I was looking at the damage reports from the Revolutionary War, and this is actually a document where they're writing, oh, what was stolen by the British. And so it's kind of hard to see, but we have this in the New Jersey State Archives for anyone who might be interested. So for example, the people who were either stolen or ran away with the British were 2 Negro men and 2 Negro women. And this is listed along with cider and saddles. So I direct the Black Heritage Trail and the African American History Program. This also includes the Barry Garvin Prize, which we give a prize to folks, either teachers or librarians who demonstrate excellence in teaching African American history. I also work with the other departments like Revolution NJ, which is working on the upcoming sequentennial, the upcoming 250th commemoration of the United States in 2026, which the country will be commemorating across various states, as well as the Marion Thompson Wright Lecture. The Black Heritage Trail legislation was signed in 2022. I now have a staff, a project manager, and an assistant project manager that are helping to fill this mandate. We've worked closely with the public. Particularly, a lot of these members of the public have their own history projects in Jersey City, as well as in Lawnside, which is a historically Black town in New Jersey. And so that has been a pleasure. And we are also continuing the work of the New Jersey Black Cultural and Heritage Foundation. They work with us as well. So we have so many folks who are just on the ground doing research, providing interpretation opportunities. So African Americans began settling the land that became the borough of Lawnside as early as 1659. And it's actually the first independent self-governing Black community in the Northeast by 1926. In the 20th century, Lawnside became well known for its jazz scene. But what you see, guys, see here is the Peter Mott House. It's a very special house. And just like Ms. Nelson said, they've recently started an underground railroad camp And they've also started training younger docents and are now doing an augmented reality for visitors. And they are on the Black Heritage Trail, the whole borough. So we're looking forward to really promoting the site. And actually, when you come through Newark Airport, there's an image of it. The Dr. James Still site, which is actually owned by the state of New Jersey. Its mission is to teach, restore, and preserve the legacy of Dr. James Still, the Black doctor of the Pines from the 1800s. Again, a robust, even though it's owned by the state of New Jersey, the Still family and a whole cadre of volunteers actually administer the site. So they have programs like yoga, artifact preservation. My colleague at the New Jersey Historical Commission, Dr. Mark Lawrence, actually worked on the archaeology project for this site. And so we are so proud of it. We also have other sites that do not necessarily show evidence of their past history. So in Atlantic City, there is a marker for Chicken Bone Beach. It was not put there by the state. It was actually put there by volunteers in Atlantic City. Chicken Bone Beach, we have Martin Luther King pictured here on the beach looking very jazzy, if you guys don't notice. Next time I'll make the image bigger. We also have a great picture with Sammy Davis on the beach. And so Chicken Bone Beach was actually the segregated section for African Americans in the Atlantic City beach area. But this is just to give you an idea of what we have as a part of the Black Heritage Trail. Now, some of you have probably heard of Scarlet and Black. It's a program or a project by Rutgers, New Brunswick. They released 3 manuscripts over the past couple of years. And now it is a gigantic interpretation project. And it's stewarded by Jesse Baker, who is actually on our advisory team for the Black Heritage Trail too. On the bottom, you'll also can see the markers that they've erected around the New Brunswick campus. And what Dr. Baker is actually leading is really making sure that New Jersey archives, so our manumission records, our birth certificates of enslaved folks, and all these other materials are all uploaded to a global database. And so he's doing a great work stewarding that. As you know, we have some well-known African-American scholars at Rutgers, New Brunswick, including Deborah Gray White, Marisa Fuentes, Dr. Erica Armstrong. We also have our private historic museums, like Morven Museum and Garden, which was owned by the Stockton family. Some of you may or may not know about the colonization movement in the United States. The Commodore Stockton was a part of obtaining the area of what we now call Liberia. The famed mythology about it is that Commodore Stockton put a gun to the head of an African chief, and that is how Liberia was won. So the house still exists. Morven still exists, the former house of the Stocktons, and they have embarked on an inclusive history and interpretive plan. And so just doing some great work with my former colleague at the New Jersey Historical Commission, Greer Luce, as well as a consultant. They've really been illustrating the ways and the histories that can be interpreted at the site and next steps for taking those. So we're really excited for that. I think Joseph McGill actually had one of his sleep-ins where he stays at the enslaved sites. I forgot the name of his project, but I can't remember the heck. Sorry, y'all. A slave dwelling project, and I was able to attend that, and it was amazing. Another one of our grantees is Marplet Hall, and they recently did an exhibition 3 years ago during COVID called Beneath the Floorboards, where they basically reinterpreted the whole house. They also worked with a community group to actually make this quilt. And they've really brought to life the stories of the enslaved people who worked in the house by name. And they did excellent research. Please check out their work as well. Lostels Memorial Project, we have in East Brunswick. The Lostels Public Memorial Project is a tribute to the Black women, children, and men who were unlawfully sold during the domestic slave trade. In 1818, officials holding offices of public trust facilitated the transportation of these individuals from New Jersey and surrounding areas to plantations in the Deep South. The project recognizes the humanity of these individuals and seeks to raise awareness of these stories. This is another powerful story about Judge Winkle, who basically colluded with enslavers and dealers in the South and in the North to illegally sell African Americans to the South. And so, for example, one story that people always gravitate to is a young baby who's brought in front of the judge, and the judge asked the young baby, because at that point in New Jersey history, you had to say that you wanted to be sold to the South in order to be sold to the South. And the baby cried, and they have in the notes that the baby agreed to be sold to the South by their cry. This is a very powerful story, and they created a marker for it, and they continue to work on this project. This is another one of our projects. This one is in North Jersey in Elizabeth, one of the earliest sites in New Jersey, colonized by the British or settled by the British. And this is the 313 Ancestors Speak, which documents the enslaved and free African Americans buried on the grounds of First Presbyterian Church. This is the monument that they created last year. I think they installed it. Another robust group of both scholars and community activists. And I want to include my project, which is Black Power 19th Century, which is a multimedia project. Currently, I have some of my research and work on view at the historic Ballantine House with the Newark Museum of Art. And I would also like to highlight another individual and scholar in New Jersey, Christopher Thompson. Christopher completed this excellent bibliography, if you're ever needing a reference, called The Black Freedom Struggle in Northern New Jersey, a review of literature. One of the things that has been my goal, as well as Christopher's and other folks, is to really highlight the Black liberation heritage of African Americans in New Jersey, along with understanding the basics of what went into what was the structure of history, but to also emphasize the resilience of African Americans in this region, which is a part of the narratives that I think people are hungry to hear, but also demonstrate how we all reimagined liberation as Americans in this American project. I would like to thank you for listening to this today. And to learn more about the New Jersey Historical Commission, please visit our website or our social media channels. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask. Have a good day.
Thanks, Nicole. I also want to just highlight, she brought up the New Jersey Gradual Abolition Act. And one of the things as we go towards these periods of abolition that are happening in our area that a lot of people are confused about. So I just want everyone to be clear. The year the acts are passed are not the years of freedom.
Yeah.
Get clear on that. Right? Because everyone wants to start freeing people in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut years before the enslaved are actually freed. And in New York, the original act actually does not have an ending date. Right? So just a little preach there. I want to thank my colleague, Heather Lodge, who unfortunately was not able to join us today, for sharing some of the things that are happening in Connecticut. She covers some new school curriculum, Venture Smith, the Witness Stone Project, and some interpretive sites. Heather sees the biggest part are the changes to school curriculum and programs supporting educators that have really come to the table in the last 5 years. One note that immediately caught my attention in reviewing her material was her comment that these changes have made understanding the slavery in Connecticut, not the South, an official part of the state's curriculum for the first time. Regionality and how we speak to the institution of slavery is very, very important. We can see the diversity of the labor they engaged in, but also the range of the economic links to the larger transatlantic slave trade. There are numerous sections that are relevant. And if you're interested in delving further into this curriculum, you can find all of this information online. A narrative of the life and adventures of Venture A, native of Africa, but resident about 60 years in the United States of America, is the earliest slave narrative in the United States. It was published in 1798. In 2019, Venture Smith's Colonial Connecticut, written by Elizabeth J. Norman and illustrated by Michael Borders, was published. This book provides teachers and students alike with a riveting first-hand account of what life was really like for a person of color in Connecticut, in colonial Connecticut. It delivers an alternative perspective of American history, other than the traditional upper-class white male point of view so prevalent in our 19th century town histories. Venture Smith is a role model for all Americans, and this book should be read not only by middle school students and their teachers, but by everyone. Heather finds that it has really been exciting to see tools created for teachers, which made the subject more accessible to actually be used, and then teachers pushing for the framework to match what they learned and have seen. Many of you are already aware of the Witness Stone Project. Their work is expanding throughout Connecticut and currently has over 200 stones placed and 15,000 students involved in the project. They are to be commended for their ongoing work. And for those of you who are not familiar, please visit their website, the Witness Stone Project. Around the entire tri-state region, we are seeing more historic sites expanding their stories to be more inclusive, including adding interpretation of those enslaved on their properties. This trend can also be seen in Connecticut. And here you have several locations who are expanding or shifting their focus, including the Bush Holly House in Greenwich, Highland House in Guilford, Hempstead House in New London, Keeler Tavern in Ridgefield, the Caffey House in Windsor, and also the Prudence Crandall Museum in Canterbury. The Yale and Slavery Research Project that was founded in 2022 is also delving into the history of Yale and slavery and includes many people, including the Livingstons of New York, who donated money to the college during this time. Beyond historic sites, two significant locations in Middletown and New London have been designated UNESCO Sites of Memory for their participation in the slave trade. They also have the Mary and Eliza Freeman Center, which was designated a National Historic Site. Since the establishment in 1995, Connecticut's Freedom Trail has continued to expand. Trails such as this one offers opportunities for programs and lectures, but also directly supports statewide Black history tourism. When you or visitors in your location are looking to explore early Black history in the tri-state area, having a sheet of various trails like the one Nicole, my colleague, mentioned, several that we have here in New York, the Freedom Trail in Connecticut, near you to share with your visitors boosts everyone's knowledge and curiosity. So always think about that. It is not just your site. All of our individual sites are connected through story, through involvement, and often through family. As I noticed on one of my colleagues' slides, the Livingston name showing up. A primary family right here in New York. Remember, they all started, this whole area started during the New Netherland period, and they're all connected. So when you think about enslavement in our region, expand out. What other families or what other people within your family are connected to other sites? Some of them may be across state lines. So I want to thank Heather for sharing so many great things. And I want to thank all of you for giving us this opportunity to share with you some of the highlights that are happening in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And we'll open up for any questions that you may have.
So while we're setting up for questions, I'll just say something. So yeah, just following up on one of the gradual Abolition Act in New Jersey, the 1804 one. So basically, with the 1804 Gradual Abolition Act, whoever was enslaved at that time would remain enslaved until they died, they ran away, or they were illegally sold to the South or another place. And the people born after the institution of the Gradual Abolition Act, for men, they would be enslaved for 24 years, and for women, 21 years. So that was the Gradual Abolition Act. And a lot of the early plantations in northern New Jersey, some of the plantation owners had plantations in places like Barbados, North Carolina, and actually one of the regions, the early regions in New Jersey is called New Barbados, but it's now under the name of Harrison, Kearney area. So I just wanted to note that.
Yes.
All of this is amazing and exciting, and the themes are so far in advance of what we all were talking about. I was saying 5 years ago, 10 years ago, in terms of really talking about the centrality of the Black experience in the entire history of the region. we've only just started to touch on it. So we, as the Mid-Hudson Anti-Slavery History Project, we're not a site, we're a small, not-for-profit volunteer organization. But the work that we're doing is so in line with what you've been talking about. For example, we're working with both the history department and the geography department at Vassar College to be doing local walking tours with college students. And the next step is involving high school students. We are mapping Black burial grounds in the Hudson region. We are working with the geography department to maybe next year do something called a heat map. And the reason I think that's really exciting is because one of the things we're uncovering by looking at this relationship between geography and Black history is these centers. We started off incorrectly calling them centers of resistance. They're actually centers of community development that had an outsized role in the development of civil rights, voting rights, abolition, etc., literacy, a variety of things. And when you start looking at them geographically, you start seeing these clumps, these heat centers, right? To me, I would love to be working with y'all. So the question is, how do we coordinate this incredible work? We'd like to be part of this. I know, we're part of North, sort of, but I don't. What kind of infrastructure do we need to build so that when we start doing this heat map, that you're doing the Black history, the Black burial grounds, we can be putting the Black burial grounds we're doing research on into that same framework. So we're not duplicating and we're being additive.
So the question for people from the Mid-Hudson Anti-Slavery History Project was they're working on a program, a heat map, that one of the things that they are collecting is information on Black burial grounds and Black cemeteries, and how do they connect with the project that I'm currently working on. So one of the things that we do not have in New York at all is a statewide survey of historic Black burial grounds. And that's from the 17th to basically just post-Civil War. So the work that you're doing links into that. And how do we link into that is when we do this survey, now that I know that you're working on it, I'll be reaching out to you. But the State Historic Preservation Office actually has been keeping a list of known burial grounds and cemeteries. Burial ground cemeteries, not necessarily burial grounds, but cemeteries actually falls under the Department of State. So one of the challenges that we have is that there are so many entities that are involved, and people are just not aware of who do they need to reach out to, how do we just get this information in one central place. So that's one of the things that Parks will be working on, because it is part of historic preservation, is to reach out to the just general Black history community saying, we're looking to do this survey, share this information, send your information to us so we can start creating a master survey of all the locations. And then from there, one of the things that we are hoping to have is a conference. I want to say it's definite, but it's pending funding, because like the history overall, everyone has been working very siloed. So there is no central community. So we have many people working on new locations, and I've gotten a number of calls to say, Levada, who do I talk to? What are the best practices? What am I looking for? From the 17th century, we have burial grounds that are marked with field stones, some of them carved, and then we go all the way to granite headstones, right, over the time. But when we start looking at remains and how are they handled, and also how do we maintain these burial grounds as artifacts, it is really important that we develop a standard of good practices. What are our best practices? So that's what I'm really hoping that the survey and the convention does. Pulls together a community that right now is very separate, that has no structure. So I'll, through Norse, through our network across the state, we'll be sharing this as it comes up. This is probably going to be happening in 2026. It takes a couple of years to, pull it all together. But we are hoping to have at least a baseline survey by the time we get into 2027. So people have places of memory, places of memorial that they can go and visit. But many of the things that the Northern Slavery Collective have been working on is really to get us out of this silo situation and to lay the foundation for some primary things that we don't have. Like, we don't have a survey of all the they're called Africanisms, but African cultural artifacts that have been dug in New York. But yet we have things keep showing up in books, right? Those famous corn cobs out of the house in Brooklyn. Well, that's nice to know, but really, where are they? Where are the reports around archaeological digs? We have all of these religious and cultural artifacts popping up all over the state. But again, there is no central database for that. And because of that, there's one database that looks at Africanisms that are found, and nothing above Maryland is listed, right? So New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, where we're finding the crystals, where we're finding the Dakinga, where we're finding these religious and cultural artifacts, why is our area not on these databases? It's because we have no unit to go to them and say, hey, we're seeing the same things. We're finding the beads, we're finding the markings, we're finding these cultural connections to Africa. So that's really the baseline of a lot of enslavement to freedom, is to put together these foundational things that we don't have and that we need. So I'll keep you posted.
And I'll just say quickly, just briefly, and it's interesting that you bring up the corn cobs in Brooklyn, because when Joe Zemla at Marl Pit House was working on Beneath the Floorboards, in the attic under the boards was the formation of the corn. And he was able to identify that as not just like corn that was under the floorboards, because he was able to find the research of what happened in Brooklyn and therefore make a connection to it. And so I think it kind of underlines what you're saying, is that it facilitates the knowledge when people are finding things. I mean, imagine if we weren't at home during COVID, and Joe was doing his regular, like, preparing for the exhibition, and he didn't have time to linger and research. He's just preparing. And that might not have been something that he would have noted, right? But yet and still, that's a significant
A
aspect.
significant find.
We have plans for commemorating the 1775 burning of New York City. We have both a late winter oil slave plot and an actual fire in October 1775 here in Kingston.
The 1775 fire in Kingston is the burning of Kingston by the British, or is it a separate plot? I'm not familiar with that, so I will.
Rebellion in Kingston that was plotted, but it was a foil.
Okay. See, that's, yeah, I thought it was a plan to burn, but didn't happen. Okay.
Not sure. Because we also know that there were more rebellions than we know.
There are a number of rebellions, and I know that there is a lot of research and work going on in Kingston. So right now I can't speak to that, but I will definitely reach out to my connections. One of the connections I have in Kingston is actually a state historic site, Senate House, and they're doing a lot of research on the Black community in Kingston. So if you will send us your name or connect with us some way, I'll let you know what I find out. But this is one of the reasons why we're looking forward to that calendar about 2027 commemorations and celebrations happening, because things are happening all over the state. And we do really, I'm very grateful that there will be a central hub for all of us to look for that information.
Okay. We're wondering if there's anything happening with the New York City.
I would say that would probably, I'm not aware of what's happening in New York City around that. If anyone would know, it would either be the New York State Historic Society or the City Museum.
The 1775 report of the rebellion was in a couple of newspapers.
Okay.
And there's zero other evidence so far, and a lot of people have looked. So there's no court records, there's no follow-up reports.
It's just reported in the newspaper.
Saying executioners who, you know. And interestingly, in one of those newspaper articles, one of the three also adds, oh, the same thing happened in Long Island last week. So again, these kind of rumors of, and this is early 1775, early spring.
Yeah, I think when we see a lot of these, like,
One of the audience members here was talking about the fire in Kingston shows up in 2 historic newspapers, and they also in those articles referenced a similar incident that happened out on Long Island. So right now there is a lot of research still going on, and there is a book that I just ordered that speaks to a lot of these insurrections happening and being downplayed because of the increase of free Blacks in the area. They don't want to make the white population more nervous than they are, because suddenly there's this growing population of newly freed. So I'm not familiar with any plans that are happening again here in the city. Right now, I think that New York City is focused on 2025 to 2026, where they will be commemorating the 400th anniversary of the founding of New Amsterdam as the capital of New Netherlands. We're walking through some amazing anniversary times right now. Right now, we are in the 400th anniversary of the founding of New Netherlands. Then we go right into New Amsterdam. From there, we're jumping right into the Rev War. And we say 2026, but please know that is an 8-year celebration, right? It's not just 1 year, it is an 8-year commemoration. And there's a lot of new research adjusting what we thought we knew about many of the campaigns during the Revolutionary War, particularly here in New York, the Sullivan-Clinton campaign, which burns out the Six Nations. So there's a lot going on, and then we jump right into 2027. We are walking mirrors of the years because these things happened at the same time. And it is really amazing to be part of these monumental anniversaries.
Yeah, and I just wanted to quickly note that, you know,
we have evidence of, fires in northern New Jersey and New Jersey by enslaved people in the late 1700s. And I think what really hasn't been, studied as much is the whole kind of blowback for that, right? So even though we hear a lot about the Black codes and things like that in the South, what you also have in New Jersey and I assume New York are all of these towns that are creating laws. So like in 1801 in Newark, they're trying to prevent African Americans from meeting after 8 o'clock. They're trying to prevent African Americans from not meeting in groups of more than 3 people. Things that we all studied about the South. They're preventing them from meeting with people who pretend to be free. And so you see a lot of these tensions. And, that discussion is so under-discussed, or it's so underrepresented in how we think about slavery, because we were raised on this whole morality discussion of slavery when there are these very kind of strong debates about economics, and knowing the tension that having, or the existing tension that you have to keep inflicting violence, and that African Americans are resisting in different ways, right? But while you have fires here in Newark, you also have folks who are supporting, what is it, the African Free School here, John Jay and them created. But you also have African Americans who are really kind of like undergirding the support of the African Free School. I'm not sure what year, what is that, 1792?
Yeah, they are, because there's a pushback,
Yeah.
you want to give us freedom, but you want to treat us like, the Manumission Society, who supports the African Free School, basically told Black parents that they were not qualified to raise their own children. I mean, so we have a lot of these glorifications of people. But when you go back to the documents and you read the newspapers and you read the letters, what you find is a different story. And we also start, you brought up the colonization. Colonization was huge, huge in this area. Yes, we will free them, but let's put them on a boat and get them out of here. And many people were colonizationists, including Lincoln. So these are the kinds of opportunities for research. These are the kinds of areas of exploration that are way more prevalent now than they even were like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. The work that is being done is just opening up so many gateways for more work and more research. And I just can only commend my colleagues around the state and around the region for taking the time to go back into the collections, to go back to the newspapers, and to be inclusive and bring the Black perspective forward in this history. Because what we find is that it is not what we learned in school, by far, not at all. But it makes a lot more sense when we have the thousands of people enslaved here, that it was not passive. To me. Easiest way, send it to me, because the people that it needs to go to are right above my head. Literally. Literally a floor above my head.
You can track it.
Deborah Hamer asks, she says, I very much appreciate this session and its emphasis on seeing New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut as connected in some ways when we study the history of slavery. I wonder if the presenters might share some ways to keep that specific element of working together across states going.
An element to keep it working is this organization.
Yeah.
It's the Northern Slavery Collective. That is its purpose, to support people and sites, locations who are doing the work during the period of enslavement so we can stop feeling like we are working by ourselves. So you have a network, and that network means that you're reading a letter and another site or a name comes up. Even if you don't know anyone at that site, there's someone connected to Norse that you can reach out to say, hey, can you do an introduction for me? We have for too long been separated. So we are working across state lines. We're working across property lines, across disciplines. For the first time in my career as a historian, I really feel the gulf that has been between scholars, public historians, people at historic sites and societies, and volunteers is just disappearing. Just disappearing. And I am really grateful for that, because the information rolls up and down that line now, which before it was in the academy, or it was over here at the site, or it was over here at a historic society. Now it is way more fluid than it has ever been. And as long as we keep that fluidity and use organizations like the Northern Slavery Collective to be able to keep those doorways and gateways open, we all benefit.
And one thing I definitely want to give a shout out to our digital archives. I remember way back in my 20s, decades ago, when folks were talking about digital archiving, and I was just like, why? You can go into the library, you can go to BOPES at NYU and go sit there. I was just like, they're just creating things for grants. This is just so bad. And now, before I go to sleep, I look at the 1840 directory and I can lay in bed, right, and go through the 1840 directory. What does this mean for equity, right? Is that it now means that I don't have to take a day off from work, take PTO time, take whatever time to look at something, or I don't have to pay money to travel to another area to do the research. And I think what that's doing is that it's opening the gates for research so that say academics or professors or interns who might have just had access to these things, and then they only had access if they had grants or if it was at their local institution. Now someone researching their family's genealogy can find some kind of meeting space with a researcher, can find some other meeting space with a museum professional. And it's really, like you said, it's really like making these stories more authentic and truthful. And I say truth with quotes around it. But yeah, and I think a lot of the digital archives has helped that process.
I mean, the fact that manumission documents were found this summer and they are already available online. And many of the digitizing projects are actually free for many institutions. So don't think that the path for getting your information is not there. It is there. Reach out to the State Archive. Reach out to the Greater Hudson Heritage, because we need it and it's happening. And they are powerful, powerful resources for all of us. Yes.
Very frustrating to bring us here. We're farm guys, we're not historians, not researchers. Is that the public narrative that we tell visitors is that the family enslavers were sustenance farmers, that they grew just enough for them to survive. We do not discuss the lives of the enslaved people with our leaders. When we recently, as of several months ago, named them on our website, but it's not visible to the public. Do you have any advice on how to change that.
It is frustrating and it is tricky. And I would like to say that, so the question was, when we have people here you're from the Queen's Farm, right? And the site doesn't want to talk about enslavement. First of all, you're not by yourself. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are still struggling with this story. There are a lot of people who are still struggling with the myth that there was no enslavement in New York. Stepping out of that, do the research and publish the paper yourself. Yes.
Want to understand the story better, not represented as you can say. I think, where we're struggling is just, there may be some of we need, from my perspective, I'm here to understand a little more about all of this, and also just, we need help. Like we need experts in the field to come and say, you know what, this is how you tell the story. We have to research. I think it's just, we want to be able to,
Call me. Because this is it. People have the research, they don't know how to tell the story. You have members of boards of directors who may or may not want the story told because they feel like they are the only ones, right? Or this is an anomaly that they are embarrassed about. Check that, right?
Majority of them they want the story told. No one has just taken it on to do it.
Right, but there is a way, right? You have to change your tours. You have to community engage. There are pathways for how to do this. And there are sites and locations all around you who have also walked this path. So allow us, Norse, to introduce you to some of your neighbors and help you craft that path forward. And this is one of our purposes, right? To help you do that. So we'll talk after and we'll figure out a way because it is doable. And for many, it is not easy. And there are sites that are still struggling with it, even as we read new documents and broaden the story. So there is assistance, and that's one of the reasons for the existence of the Northern Slavery Collective. So we'll talk after, and we'll craft a way forward for you to be able to do that. Yes, thank you. I designed that exhibit. So yeah, we're doing it. We're doing it. And we at State work under our whole history, which is bringing the stories of multiple perspectives into place because New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, New Netherlands has been multicultural and multilingual since the Dutch stepped here. I can't remember because I just ordered it amongst about 4 or 5 others. Can they reach out to me? We can send out, right, because I have to say, in getting into preparing for 2027, a number of books, particularly from the Black perspective and by Black scholars, have crossed my desk. The ancestors have just like thrown them in my face that I was not aware of. And so my book list has expanded. So yes, I'll share with my colleagues at the Dyckman House who make us fabulous, my book list, which is expanding.
Can you put it on the Facebook page too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Share the presentation.
Yes, are we, yes.
I would have to edit mine first. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Said something like people are surprised or don't, I forget the word you used, but why are they?
Oh, why are they surprised at slavery?
What
There,
does
that that there was slavery in New Jersey.
that alone?
Yeah, because they think New York and New Jersey were free states.
Right, okay. No, I know that, I thought maybe it was more than
Oh,
else, I thought maybe it was something else.
oh no, that's pretty simple. Yeah, yeah.
The man gave scores of school tours.
Mhm.
And invariably, none of the teachers knew about enslavement in New York State.
Yeah.
One of
The reason is, it's been suppressed.
Yes.
Can't forget this.
Yes.
The history of racism and racial oppression in this country has been tremendously powerful.
Yeah.
And I'm no longer surprised when somebody said, gee, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
But we also have to say,
it's true.
most of what all of us learned, we learned in school. And to make the subject matter easy and quick,
Yeah.
slavery was connected to Southern plantations and the Civil War. Rarely is it discussed earlier than that. This still is how it is taught in New York. And it is slowly changing, but it requires time. That's why I was thrilled at Heather's presentation, where she said that Connecticut slavery is now, for the first time, part of the curriculum in Connecticut.
Mm.
That is still yet to happen here in New York. And this area also started under the Dutch period. All of those documents were in Dutch, right? Thank you, Dr. Charles Goering. 50 years of one career for one man and a team of 2 to 3 people who have literally translated thousands of documents out of Dutch into English, opening the gateway for that work to start also in the Netherlands and bring the institution of slavery into our history much earlier than it ever has been before. That is one of the things, and I truly am hoping that 2027 will help people to realize that slavery was here for 200 years. So we are part of that and have always been part of that. And we can correct things like, well, the enslaved were brought from the South. No, New York brought in directly from Africa and sold South.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many myths and so many misunderstandings. And the gateway is opening. The doors are opening. And it is to the point now that I don't think it could ever be suppressed again.
Yeah.
And that is the fortunate part.
Yeah.
People can try, but those of us who know will not forget.
Yeah. And I would just like to just briefly say, in New Jersey, we also have legislation. We have the Amistad Act. I think it's been in place for about 15 or 16 years. And it is a mandate for schools to teach African American history. The only thing in New Jersey is that there isn't a standard curriculum for all of the schools. So what you might be learning in 3rd grade in Patterson is much different from what you might learn in Princeton in 3rd grade, right? And then I just wanted to say that one of the challenges when, say, folks don't even know that there was enslavement in New Jersey or Rhode Island, Connecticut, or New York, is that when I'm giving a lecture on Black liberation, right? So Black activism in the early 1800s, African Americans purchasing houses so that they can like get the vote back in New Jersey, right? Because African Americans could vote in New Jersey with the initial New Jersey Constitution, right? Things people don't know, and then they lost the vote. But African Americans building churches, creating their own schools, is that people cannot even conceptualize that because they don't even conceptualize African Americans in northern states before the Great Migration.
Right.
So it brings in a consideration when you're teaching or lecturing or interpreting these things, is because it's the audience doesn't even necessarily even begin to grasp that there were African Americans who actually built houses or churches or organized during these periods, you know. So yeah.
Follow up on that. That one of the things that we've been focusing on in our educational work is that very thing.
Yeah.
That it's not just this whole question of agency and resistance, but it's building, it's placing, it's families, it's sororities and fraternities and churches and businesses and correspondence with other African Americans across the state and the country, and newspapers. And how come this barber in Poughkeepsie is writing to Frederick Douglass back and forth and having this?
Yeah.
This is important, but one of the things that comes up, because we've been doing a project, sort of a community art project, where we teach this basic history, and then we do a community art project that speaks to this and to the economic question, which is that African Americans were skilled laborers, not only unskilled or semi-skilled, but who were the carpenters and the masons and the blacksmiths and the
Coopers.
The Millers.
Mhm.
That has people have responded to that in ways that has been universal, because I didn't know that.
Right.
And in their artwork, they've actually represented that, I would say, more than almost anything else, other than perhaps the river, the river passage, and the idea that people were running away and using the river, and also, you know, Black captains and so those two things have been really critical. But speak to this question of economy. Who built the infrastructure? See that wall over there? See that church over there? See that dock over there? Who actually built that? That still exists today, and you can see it and touch it and smell it. So I think, and not only that, but you're talking about the cash, the economy. We're talking also about industrial slavery that was happening. Who was making the bricks? Who was making the cotton that came up, not the cloth, that was up to the south? Who was making money from all of those things? Is exciting when people see it, and it is like, we've also found that, but we're mostly dealing with adults, but some kids too, is that they actually started to go out and research for themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't know that. So it's a very exciting process, and it's so exciting to hear all of the things that you're talking about, and hopefully that we can begin to do more and more collaboration, because we learn from all of this. We have to keep learning from each other.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, okay. You want to say goodbye to online?
To thank everyone for joining us online and here in person. Keep it up, keep in touch, and we'll be back to you soon. And we can continue this conversation here, but we